I'm sure that you know that in the past few years, more than 50% of the world's population lives in cities. Think of it. Think of Rio de Janeiro spreading. Think of Istanbul adding 400,000 new people every year, 700 cars a day. Think of China, that in the next decade or two will move 250 million people from the countryside into the cities. 250 million people. Think of Mumbai in India spreading. Even think of old American cities like New York and Boston, which are growing after many years of diminishing in size. And you have an idea of the excitement and the ferment and the expansion and the possibility for forms of human habitation, exchange, culture, economy, etc. All right. The world's urbanized. Now what? I would propose that we design for it. That through the discipline and practice of urban design, we address this urbanization around the world. But before I go into my presentation, I want to give a shout out to my brilliant students at the University of Michigan, because it's their work I'm going to be showing. This is very collaborative work, and I want to recognize their contribution to it. The presentation will have a few parts. First, I'm going to try to define for you what is urban design by using a city I know very well, New York. This is the view from my apartment house in Midtown Manhattan. I'll then show some projects by my urban design and architecture and planning and landscape architecture students at the University of Michigan. I'll then discuss a little bit about what I think it takes to become an urban designer and how we might prepare people for this new world that's emerging around the globe. And I'm going to conclude in a slightly different way from other presentations by showing a list of credits of the work. All right. You may not think of New York as a designed object, but it is very much a designed object. And it was designed consciously and unconsciously by the people who have inhabited it since time began. Think of the Native Americans who created desire lines and pathways across the Manhattan woods that would later become parts of the city street network. Think of the Dutch and English colonists who inserted dimensions based in building technology that would help regularize construction through the city. Think of those colonist African slaves who leveled hills and created streets. Think of the 1811 street grid, which would create a system of streets and blocks that helped define the city's urbanism to this day. Think of the great struggle of reformers who tried to open up the city to light and air, to create better housing for people through rules and regulations that became law, that shaped thousands and thousands of buildings across the city. Think of the men and women who contributed anonymously to that struggle, and to see the outcomes. Think later of zoning codes that created the setback skyscrapers that defined so much of the city, and places like the building viewed from my building, the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building. Think of very strict urban design guidelines that were introduced beginning in the 1970s, requiring certain finishes and architectural expression, setbacks, and ground floor amenities for new buildings. I think also of the preservation movement that sought to preserve some older buildings in the city, like these townhouses that create valleys and openings for the skyscrapers that surround them. Think of all of that layered, and you'll see what urban design is, and the means and tools that urban designers have in shaping the urban environment. That's it in kind of a nutshell, and I'm using a city that I know to describe it to you. Conscious and unconscious maneuvers, great struggles and legislation, zoning allowances and building codes, definitive urban design guidelines, preservation. It's all part of the toolkit that urban designers have in creating cities. Now think of the challenges that we're facing with these expanding cities and these old cities in say, the environment of climate change, which presents perhaps overwhelming forces that we need to confront and adjust our systems of habitation in order to accommodate. And you have an additional challenge on top of this expanding urban population, which makes the work of urban designers very exciting, very, very exciting. Here are two projects that my students developed. The first for dear old Manhattan. This project was done between two 100-year storms, Irene and Sandy, in response to the climate instability that New York is confronting. Identifying areas in Manhattan where the edges of the city might be reinforced, where new soil channels might provide runoff for water conditions, where new transportation systems might not only speed people's movement through the city, but reduce carbon emissions in the city, where this infrastructure development would be related to new investments in schools, institutions that would create a more equitable life. So here's an example of a project, and this is the concept diagram, that looks at an urban condition holistically and uses these climate changes as a trigger mechanism to explore more deeply what the form and content of the city might be. And here we see examples of the outcome, where dense development is withdrawn from the city's coastline, where new buffers and water villages and park spaces and berms and even aquaponic farms are developed to help mitigate the changes in climate and the floodplains that are coming to emerge in the city. And an introduction of greenery, a green system throughout Manhattan. Here's an example of one of those points in the plan where infrastructure meets transportation systems, meets the carving of the city's surfaces to provide more public space, but also high-intensity, high-rise development where mixed uses might mix to accommodate the city's increases in population. Here at the neighborhood level, new ground transportation systems coordinated with those soil channels to create a more convenient environment, a more healthful environment, a quieter environment for city neighborhoods. And here along the waterfront, a restoration of wetlands and greenery before the old skyline, with the new skyline emerging in the background. That layering of natural devices and new architecture and infrastructure, maintaining the city as we know it, but also changing it, I think, in a profound way, making it easier to live in, making it more convenient, making it quieter as the density of the city is maintained and the skyline is maintained, the iconographic skyline is maintained. This was an academic project whose purpose was to encourage the discussion of climate change and infrastructure responses in the city, and it's been published in American and English journals. The next project is in a very different kind of situation, and if there are old cities that need to be reconsidered around the world, there are also new cities to be built. And this city is located in Turkey, outside of Istanbul. It's the plan for a new urban settlement of about 3 million people, about the size of Chicago, 30 miles from the center of Istanbul at the city's municipal edge. Currently federally owned property where abandoned coal mines provide the opportunity for a new city to be built. It was suggested by a visionary young government manager named Musa Yetamuglu, who invited the University of Michigan to participate with him in thinking about the potentials for Istanbul. Potentials that grow out of crisis. Just as New York is confronting certain crises, cities like Istanbul are confronting crises. Here we see Istanbul, yes, and the famous Bosphorus Strait that connects the Marmara Sea and the Black Sea, and outside of it, the Marmara Sea fault line. And it's anticipated that within the next 20 years or so, a major earthquake will occur within the city that may take out as many as 1 million people. And in a city that contributes 50% of its nation's GDP, if Istanbul is destroyed, there'll be severe repercussions throughout Turkey. And Musa Yetamuglu was very concerned about that and asked us to think about designing a new city along the Black Sea coast, well outside the earthquake seismic zone, approximately the size of Manhattan in land area, as you can see here. And here is the project. 3 million people during the day, 3 million people at night, 3.5 million people during the day. A city that stretches itself along those abandoned minefields, that maintains the Craterous lakes that were left behind as an amenity and park feature for the city, where blocks and buildings are draped across the terrain, creating curvilinear streets and gently winding roads connected by a major spine and transportation system. The emphasis on north-south movement rather than east-west movement to reduce congestion and pollution. And because it is related to the topography of the land, resonant with Turkish people, whose cities often are built in these kinds of conditions, where mosques are at the meeting between curving streets and markets open up in small plazas, all of which would be reflected here in the new city. And to push its carbon reduction further, the students proposed that the prevailing winds from the Black Sea help generate power, that the Black Sea itself help generate power, that wind and solar farms be located in the woods that are located behind the city. Those woods extending through the city to help aerate the city, but also, very importantly, creating places of refuge for people who might be fleeing Istanbul in the event of an earthquake. You will see one of those green spaces permeating the city. The majority of the blocks of the city low, as is familiar to Istanbul, with certain tall buildings along the spine, encouraging both local and international investment and rationalizing investment in the project. Here we see the city along the Black Sea, and the spine, and the low buildings along those curvilinear streets, the great park that would be maintained along the waterfront, the woods behind, penetrating the city, helping to aerate it and clean it. How do we prepare people to do this kind of work? How do we prepare people to address these consequential issues around the globe? Well, here's what I would suggest that people do. And a lot of the discussion today has been about education, yes. To prepare urban designers, be global. Send people around the world. Conditions aren't just local, of course, but they are global. Much of what the most exciting things going on in cities are occurring not locally, but globally. So send student urban designers out into the world. At the same time, bring the world into the urban design education process. Bring people from various locations around the world to speak and learn from each other. Here in this view, we see people from at least 4 different countries. sharing their cultural experiences, sharing their insights into cities which are valuable to learn. Be local at the same time. Know places deeply. Dig deeply into local environments. You have Miami nearby. Well, perhaps it's a city like Miami or New York or Chicago or Los Angeles to create perspective and a kind of understanding of what makes a city work, so that in going to other places, one can look and ask questions about how cities work and draw conclusions. Be interdisciplinary. Here, there is a landscape architect, a planner, an architect, some individual with a background in civil engineering. Why not have aeronautical engineers as part of this discussion? Why not have people in human factors participating in this project, sharing their ideas all at once and laying them out on paper to give the city's nuance and depth. Be collaborative. I think we've heard a lot about collaboration today. Allow people to express their ideas, test their ideas together, moving toward synthesis. Be expansive. Here's one of my favorite screenshots from the very wonderful film, Rear Window. Look to unexpected places for lessons about city building. Here we have two iconic film stars in Alfred Hitchcock's magnificent screen set that depicts not only the life of the courtyard beyond the window, but the character of the city beyond, connecting people in the foreground with the life and form of the city in the background. Look to film, look to literature, look to poetry, and bring that into the design process. And finally, be fluid. Don't think that the design of a city proceeds strictly from site reconnaissance and analysis to programming to design development to completion. But accept that analysis can, of course, lead to design, but design may open up questions for research and continued analysis. So there's a conversation across all aspects of design, creating the final product. And and this actually works this time. That leads to results like this, where I think one can project what Marshall Berman characterizes as the city as a place to live free, to live and be free. Cities are places of opportunity. That's why people move to them. And through that kind of process that I just described, I think complex and sophisticated places can be developed for them to live free. And finally, I'm going to end with this credit list. I want you to look at the names here, and you'll see people from Africa, America, Europe, Asia, South Asia. You'll see Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, all participating in this work. And I think the design of cities as a rebuke to the nonsense that's going around in the world today. A rebuke to provincialism, antagonism, chauvinism, and paranoia. And this kind of energy from many different kinds of people coming from many parts of the world, representing many disciplines, can serve as a rebuke to all the nonsense.